Hello and welcome to The Take. I'm your host, Chesley McNeil. Each weekday, we're looking at stories, making headlines, and bringing experts from our community to give their take. Here's a look back at some of the top takes from this week and how those in the know are seeing those stories that impact you. He's a journalist who gave a voice to those often silenced, covering immigration stories, family separations, and deportations in Georgia for more than 2 decades. Well, this summer, his own story became the headline. Mario Guevara, detained, held for months, and ultimately deported, despite the calls from human rights groups and also press freedom advocates nationwide. Today, he's sitting down with us on The Take for the first time since his return to El Salvador. Mario Guevara, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you take my story seriously. My community in Georgia, I really miss them.
Absolutely, and they miss you. How are you holding up since you've been taken from the United States?
You know, it's difficult time, especially because my heart is divided. I really miss my family. My family's right now separately. Just yesterday, I went to the airport, El Salvador airport, to say goodbye to my 2 kids. They returned to my second country. I believe my United States, my second country. Even right now, they don't love me anymore. But I really miss my family. I miss my community. I miss everything there. Almost 22 years living there, basically half of my life.
Wow. Describe to us what this journey was like for you.
Well, it's a new story, new part of my life. Literally, you will start to work today as a journalist too, because I have some invites for local channel to work, but now I have my channel in Atlanta. I have some client there. I have to continue working. I have 4 people working for me in Atlanta. I have to continue. I prefer to stay as a freelance right now, but you know, it's hard. But the good thing is I really see a lot of good people here, people who meet in the past. They are wonderful with me. They receive me literally like a hero. I receive a lot of support for the local media and the media in United States too, and the Europe. That is wonderful. I can see even the justice commit a mistake with me. I can see a lot of people support me, and this is wonderful.
Yeah. Take us back to the arrest. Like you were reporting on detention centers, and then you were living in one. What was that like?
Yeah, that's something horrible. I never imagined something like that. You know, I was covering a protest. It's not my first protest I was covering. I have 25 years experience in as a journalism. I covered 100 protests, maybe more. And this is the first time something like that happened to me. You know, I am 40 years old. I say, wow, I'm 50 years old, half century. It's my first time in jail. I was in 5 jail. It was something horrible, especially because I feel like a criminal. Even I never commit a crime, I feel like a criminal. It was horrible, but you know, I'm a man of faith. I believe God is under control. I think that everything is happened for something. And probably in the next 1, 2, 3 years, I will return to the United States with a different vision, you know.
Yeah. Describe to us what the conditions were like at that center that you were held in.
You know, the last was Folston Detention Center was good because I was informed before. Even in the Atlanta Federal Prison, I was victim of extortion there. Some people treat me to kill me and hurt me. You know, it's really hard because the immigrants are involved with the convicted felony people. You know, I don't know why ICE put the people like me in the middle of criminal, but I think it's this administration is don't think like that. All nation. I believe Folston was good in compared with others, but obviously you are in confinement like me. I have 70 days by me in solitary was something horrible. Right now when I say, wow, the only reason I don't turn crazy is because God was with me. I take advantage of the time reading the Bible, thinking in my family, calling my family. But it's really hard moment.
Do you believe your arrest and deportation, ultimately your deportation, was meant to silence you?
I think it's yes. I believe yes, because when the ICE officer want to transport me, they told me, "Oh, you're a journalist, right?" Yes, of course. Okay, off the record. They told me off the record. You know, you get us a hard time. Okay, I know that. I know. And after that, they say, you know, you were following us. I know. why you are doing? Because well, my job, don't take it personally. You know, they take personally against me, but I never take personally against them because I only want to inform my community. I believe I was the only Hispanic journalist following the immigration rates, and what's good for me because my community followed me for that. But you know, I paid the price. I was maybe I was negligent with my family because if you are not U.S. citizen, you don't have the same right like other journalists. I ignored that, and I paid the price. You know, I was arrested and deported. It was horrible.
Yeah. Tell us what it's like in El Salvador now that you're there.
Everything is good now. You know, I'm enjoying the food. My regular food. I pupusas. You have to try. I really miss my food. I really miss family members. I really miss some friends, co-workers, friends from my university, my college. That's wonderful. Just this week, I have a lot of meetings with people I meet, and I think this is the only good thing of that. But honestly, I wake up at 2 a.m. today, maybe 3 a.m. I think in the morning. You know, stay at 3 a.m. just thinking in your family is not easy. It's not easy.
Right. What are your chances of returning to the United States? And do you know when you could actually come back?
Well, my attorneys told me they are fighting for that because they are trying to prove was an injustice with me. It's not easy because I, in the beginning, when everything started, I had the opportunity to sign my voluntary departure. Voluntary departure will be very easy for me. Maybe I can return next year. But now, because I was deported, the punishment is worse. But I try to fight for my family. This is why I tried to stay in jail for a long time, almost 4 months. But now it's really difficult to me. Probably in the next 2-3 years, maybe when the administration change. I don't know. Yeah. But it's really hard. It's really hard.
Mario, before I let you go, I got to ask you about your family. Your son actually came on the show. We talked to him before you were actually deported. He was obviously praying for you and just hoping that it was a good outcome. He was even wanting you out of that detention center and hoping that you got to El Salvador. I got about 30 seconds left. How's your family doing? Yeah,
they are with faith in God, waiting for a miracle. Even I'm here, they are waiting for a miracle. My son, they give me a lot of support. My two sons, they are U.S. citizens. I think is the closer people I have from United States. That when they come, they will come in next month for Thanksgiving, and they coming next for Christmas. I think is my hope to see them again as soon as possible.
Absolutely. Real quickly, you know you fought for freedom, telling the truth. When you think about freedom now, does it have a different meaning for you?
Yeah, probably. I think, yeah, everything had to change.
Yeah. We're getting into the internal thinking of the Federal Reserve. Minutes of a recent meeting shows officials walking a tightrope, cutting rates to ease pressure on a cooling job market, yet still worried about inflation making a comeback. While most members backed the move, the debate over how fast the cuts or how fast to cut is far from over. Here to explain a little bit more on that is our financial guru. He joins us every single Monday right here on the show. He's a friend of the show, I like to say. Andrew Pulse, welcome back to the show, man.
Good morning, Chesley.
All right. When the Fed signaled more rate cuts right ahead, what's the very first place the average person could actually feel that change?
Credit cards, auto loans, eventually it'll trickle down into mortgage loans, home equity lines of credit. So certainly getting some rate cuts is going to ease some pressure on most consumers. I think generally speaking, most consumers have some sort of debt. They're going to feel a positive impact from this. The question is, as you've seen from the last Fed meeting and the Fed minutes, how much are we going to see as far as rate cuts the rest of the year? It's interesting because the Fed minutes showed us that certainly they're all in agreement just about on quarter-point cuts, 2 of them, possibly 3. Fed governors are about 50-50 split, divided on if we might even see a more aggressive position with 50 basis points rate cut between now and the end of the year. So it's going to be quite interesting as we go into the holiday season to see what the Fed's going to do and what if their stance amongst all the governors is going to change, or if they're going to basically just slow walk it into quarter-point cuts, 2 to 3 between now and the end of December.
Talk to us about this balancing act between inflation and jobs and how that translates to what people are paying on credit cards and mortgages and auto loans right now.
Yeah, the Fed has a difficult job, right? Because inflation could certainly start creeping up again, which is always been a concern. Meanwhile, the labor market certainly has softening up. We've been seeing that month after month. This month's going to be quite interesting, because if this government shutdown continues through the end of October, we may not get, the Fed may not get, I should say, any labor and economic reports which are due out the last week of October. That basically puts the Fed in a challenging position, trying to work blindly, so to speak, without having any current data to work off of. So it's going to be very interesting to see what kind of a position the Fed takes. But the longer the government shutdown continues, the more negative impact it has on the economy, which again creates a situation for the Fed to cut rates. And the big question is, do they stick to quarter points or do they stick to half points? Based on the labor market, you would think that they might want to get aggressive at a half-point cut at some point. However, based on inflation and those concerns, they might keep it at a quarter-point cut, based on what we're seeing now. But a lot of it's going to depend on what happens in the coming weeks.
Yeah. Andrew, I got 30 seconds here left with you. What's the one number or data point that you'll be watching for mostly and most closely before the Fed's next meeting?
Yeah, the labor market, Chesley, without a doubt. If the labor market continues to soften up, jobs, people aren't being hired, and folks are out there struggling to find employment, I think that puts the Fed in a challenging position to make a decision between an aggressive rate cut or a moderate quarter-point cut.
From loan scams to those sneaky subscriptions and even the growing love for cheaper dupes, many of us are finding new ways to try and stretch a dollar while also dodging the traps that can often come with it. As we do every Tuesday, let's welcome back to the show consumer expert Morgan Ward. Morgan, great to have you with us. So, okay, we have all seen those pre-approved messages pop up, especially when we're talking about loans. So I guess the big question is, what are the telltale signs that these loan offers are scams versus something that we might actually want to look into?
Yeah, we're getting about 134 million robocalls a day, so people are dealing with this constantly. A lot of the telltale signs are things like it's a very specific number amount. Oftentimes it's $52,000. Also, there's a sense of urgency in the individual wanting you to call them back. So they're trying to get you to commit without having a lot of time to think about it. And lastly, it's this very specific kind of voice. Now, the reason that these scams have increased is because it's now so cheap with AI to get access to consumers and also to record these voices that are very hard to discern. 40% of people can't even tell the difference, but they're often these sort of taped voices that sound a little bit different than normal human voices. Those are the telltale signs.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question. AI has really just made it even harder to differentiate what's real and what's not. So what's the best way that we can protect ourselves and our families, especially when it comes to our personal information?
Yeah, the rule of thumb is if you didn't apply, don't reply, essentially. So if this isn't something that you asked for, then don't engage in it. A few things you can do: block unknown callers. Android and iPhone both enable you to do that. And also call back the bank directly from numbers that you can see online. So don't respond to their phone number. Make sure that you have a verified phone number. And then, of course, pause before you commit to anything, because urgency is not your friend, but it is theirs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Morgan, I want to ask you about this because we're seeing more shoppers proudly switching over to a lot of store brands. Is this a trend, or is this something that we're just seeing more families try to do to beat inflation? Especially, I wonder, when does it become sort of a dupe? Or are you saving money? Because oftentimes, quality could be different, or even safety.
Yeah, no, these are great questions. So there's been a huge increase in dupes because, as we've talked about, there's all this concern in the marketplace about future earnings and whether you'll have a job. So people are turning to oftentimes private label products in grocery stores and really across the board, in clothing and perfumes and snacks and toys. And really what the defining characteristic of a dupe is that it performs and has the benefits of a name brand product. So it's not a counterfeit, but it does some of the same things. But as you said, in the past, these products oftentimes haven't been as good at those performances. So you do want to double check and make sure that these products will perform the same function, especially in the world of food or vitamins, that kind of thing. However, I will say that retailers are really working on increasing the quality of the products that they're offering as dupes because they understand that consumers need this right now, and it's a profit center for them.
Absolutely. Hey, before you go, I do want to ask you about something I think a lot of us probably deal with, and that is subscriptions. We look on our phone and we're getting billed for different things we've signed up for. How can we track what we're actually spending each month on those subscriptions, and at what point does the convenience of subscribing stop saving time and slowly start to drain our wallets?
Yeah, no, it's so important. Subscriptions seem cost effective in the short term, but if you do the math, sometimes over a 12 or 24 month period, these subscriptions are much more expensive than buying something outright. And the interesting thing is that brands are increasing the kinds of products you get subscriptions to, everything from car subscriptions to printer subscriptions. So we're doing it more and more, and there is a benefit because you have this just-in-time situation where if you need it, it's right there. You might get insurance for things, but as you said, there can be a high cost to these things, and we have to do the math before we commit.
The latest COVID vaccine rollout isn't just another booster, but a whole new strategy. For the first time, the CDC is leaving this decision up to you and your doctor, while the FDA limits approval mainly to older adults and those who are considered high risk. So what about the rest of us? Here to help us sort this all out and break it down, a look at what's changed and what's next. We're joined by Dr. Mamal Sutar from Emory's Vaccine Center. We appreciate you, Dr. Sutar, for joining us this morning. So how much of a difference could this updated formula make when we're talking about protecting ourselves, especially heading into these winter months?
Thank you for having me. So the updated COVID vaccine is not much different than last year's COVID vaccine. The COVID vaccine in general encodes the spike protein, which allows the virus to bind and infect cells. The COVID vaccines themselves generate antibodies, in particular neutralizing antibodies, which help block the ability of this virus to infect cells. So over the course of the pandemic, there have been many different variants that have evolved, and the current circulating variant is what's called the Omicron variant. A couple of years ago, the COVID vaccine moved to now a monovalent formulation, which means that it encodes for a single spike protein. This year's monovalent vaccine, it's still a monovalent vaccine, but it encodes for a slightly different version of the Omicron variant called the LP1.8.1. And this COVID vaccine should be able to provide really good protection against these circulating strains.
All right, so how effective are these updated vaccines when we compare them to earlier versions? What are they looking like now?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And our team here at the Emory Vaccine Center, using a couple years prior COVID vaccine, which contained that XBB 1.5 spike protein vaccine, was able to show that we can generate an antibody response that lasts 3 times longer than what we've seen in the prior years. This is great news, which means that we can stay protected for longer periods of time. Reports have shown that we can expect to see somewhere between a 40 to 50% effectiveness against emergency department visits, urgent care visits, hospitalization, severe disease, and death. And we expect that this upcoming COVID vaccine booster dose should be able to provide similar levels of protection.
All right, so Dr. Sutar, the FDA is now limiting, as we mentioned, approval to those mainly at least who are 65 and older, or those who have certain medical risk or are considered high risk. So looking at a public health perspective here, do you think those boundaries are too narrow? So
that's a great question. And it has been confusing over the last few months as to who can receive the vaccine and sort of what those recommendations are. The updated COVID vaccine booster dose is available to anyone over the age of 5 or older. The recommendation is that the vaccine should be taken and should be prioritized really for people that are above the age of 65, those with weakened immune systems, certain pre-existing conditions. They should really strongly consider getting the updated COVID vaccine booster. And if you're unsure, you should go talk to your primary care physician or your local pharmacist to see whether you are eligible for the COVID vaccine.
Mm-hmm. You know, Dr. Sutar, this is probably a good question for a lot of people as we're heading into the winter months, as we're getting our vaccines. How can we tell the difference between if we have the flu, a cold, or COVID?
Yeah, it's sometimes very difficult to tell whether you have the difference between these respiratory infections. Certainly there's rapid antigen tests that can allow us to be able to differentiate between flu or COVID infections. But what I would recommend is that folks really try to stay updated on their COVID vaccines as well as their flu vaccines. You can get both shots at the same time. And this allows us to stay protected against both of these viruses.
Atlanta's growing reputation as the nation's fintech capital just got another big boost. A new 12-week innovation accelerator is investing $100,000 each into 5 local startups, everything from apps that help immigrant-owned businesses manage payments to AI-powered luxury assistance tools. With more on this investment, we bring in Kina Pierre, Managing Director for Pinnacle Atlanta Innovation Accelerator. Kina, good to have you here with us this morning on The Take. Okay, so what's behind this vision? This is a really bold vision, creating a fintech accelerator right here in Atlanta. What's this all about?
Well, the FinTech Accelerator that we just launched is powered by Generator, which is who I'm working for, and the investor is Pinnacle. So we're partnering with Pinnacle Financial, who's had a long time reputation of investing in community-based, doing community-based investment and lending, powered by Generator, who's been around for quite some time, investing venture capital by way of the accelerator model. Why Atlanta? I would say for so many obvious reasons. Over 70% of the U.S. transactions, payment transactions that are processed in the United States actually are processed here in Atlanta. A lot of people don't know that. And that's why Atlanta is coined as Transaction Alley. So this coming at the time that it is in Atlanta, it is actually almost a no-brainer for us to launch it at this time.
I love it. And the program, Kina, is housed inside the Peer Center, which opened just earlier this year. How does that particular location tie into the mission of economic opportunity and equity overall?
In every way, down to the community that it resides in. You're right, just steps away from the AUC, the Atlanta University Center, and you also directly next door to the Gathering Spot. The Gathering Spot has been a long time spot for the last few years for all things that are that's coming through Atlanta, whether it be politics, investments, and just the entire investment and entrepreneur ecosystem right next door.
Yeah, I've been there several times myself. Okay, so tell us about the startups, these 5 startups who got selected for this. What stood out about them and their ideas?
Well, it's with fintech. A lot of the core of fintech is a lot of it is payments processing. But what for the selection for me, or what the selection criteria entailed, it was the location and proximity to Atlanta. We wanted companies that were in the Atlanta metro area. That was very key. But also, what stood out about these companies is the problems that they were solving. We have a company such as Billseye. Billseye is payments processing. Put a button on your screen where you can collect. You take a phone call if you're an attorney, and you can actually track your billing and track your payment just by a button that shows up on your screen. So that's innovation. So it's innovating something that is a billing model that has gone on for quite some time, but it's bringing innovation to that space. We have a company such as Guala that is tapping into micro sellers. These are those influencer markets that many of them are unbanked, but they are generating lots of revenue, and so it's tapping into that market. We have Pagarva that's tapping into the immigrant-based market for merchants. Lux AI, which is coming in to do concierge for loyalty points. So when you look at all them together, and as well as the blended app, which is the app that's helping divorced parents be able to communicate and actually make payments to one another for the needs of their children and their households. So these are all things that are solving some really interesting problems that we have, and doing it in a very innovative way.
Yeah, I love how you all make those selections. So each of these startups, they get $100,000, but I love that they also get mentorship. What types of real-world support are they also walking away with after these 12 weeks?
It's 12 weeks of, and what I say is that we throw everything in but the kitchen sink. So they're getting mentorship on a weekly basis. They're exposed over the period of this accelerator to over 60 mentors. That's in the fintech space. That's also in the space to allow them to be able to do potential partnerships in the future. Additionally, they will be exposed to 40 investors. So they're getting mentorship, they're getting investors, they're doing one-to-one weekly strategy sessions twice a week with me. So we've opened up the Generator network, my own network, as well as the network of our partners at Pinnacle, and even of one of our other partners with Tarkenton. So they're getting a lot of support that in a 12-week intensified time frame is very rare for a startup to get.
Yeah, that access is so important.
Yeah.
All right, before you go, I do want to ask you this. What type of success, or what do you think success will look like for this first cohort, let's say 6 months from now?
Yeah, so 6 months from now, we're looking at, I think success would be you're able to go in and not just download the app, because the apps are all live right now currently, but success would be strong partnerships. For some of these startups, there are partnerships that they're looking for with actual banks. So, it would be a slam dunk to have those partnerships with Pinnacle or with other banks as well. For others, we would see success. That could even be conversations around mergers. When we look at success in the venture capital space, we look at acquisitions, we look at mergers, we look at companies that are ripe and prepared for that next step.
The Supreme Court is set to revisit a landmark voting rights case that could redefine how race is considered in American elections. At its heart, whether protecting minority voters can still be done under the 1965 Voting Rights Act, or if courts will strike down one of its last major safeguards. The group Fair Fight Action connects this to Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, the law preventing racial discriminatory voting mapping. They say up to 30% of congressional Black caucus and 11% of the Hispanic caucus could lose their seats if Section 2 is overturned. Fair Fight projects Republicans could gain up to 27 additional House seats if the case comes down in their favor. Georgia has joined the case as part of the multi-state America's brief that was submitted, stating compelling states to sort their people by race under the thumb of a federal court creates a perpetual lose-lose situation for legislative decision making. Here now to dive a little bit deeper into this case is Lauren Wargrove. She's the CEO of the rights organization Fair Fight Action and former campaign manager for Stacey Abrams' run for governor. All right, Lauren, welcome to the show again.
Hello, thanks for having me.
All right, glad you're with us this morning. As we just said, the case is out of Louisiana that we were just talking about, but there's a lot on the line here in Georgia as well. Tell us what's at stake.
Yeah, so we recently did an analysis with Black Voters Matter Fund on the larger stakes of this case. So yes, this is a voting rights case that came out of Louisiana, where some non-African American voters, that's how they refer to themselves, challenged the addition of a new Black Opportunity District in Congress. And this is a really radical new theory that they're challenging the opportunity for Black Louisiana voters to elect a candidate of their choice, saying that that is racial discrimination, sort of turning the argument on its head. And so we should back up, as your entry point made. The Voting Rights Act that was passed in the 1960s was about Black voters' representation and minority voters having the opportunity to fairly elect a candidate of their choice and not deal with lack of representation. So in 1963, before the Voting Rights Act was passed, there were just 4 Black members in Congress. Today, there are about 55. And in a state like Louisiana, where about 1/3 of voters are Black, similarly in Georgia, the argument has been there should be a somewhat commensurate amount of opportunities for Black voters to elect candidates of their choice, and Black candidates specifically. The case today is a rehearing. The Roberts Court is asking a pretty radical question. They already heard this case last session. They're coming back, asking them to really dig into this sort of reverse discrimination, radical argument. And the court is signaling, the way this has been teed up, that they are prepared to gut Section 2, which they've been on a multi-decade tear to gut the Voting Rights Act and really remake elections. So that's sort of the what's at stake, not just for Louisiana, but would impact the entire country, and not just Congress, state legislatures, and local races.
Yeah, you heard the conservative argument there saying that any use of race in redistricting, even to fix discrimination, violates the Constitution. How do you respond to that claim?
That is a radical theory. This is about voters having the opportunity to have accountable representation. Our analysis shows that if you got Black voter representation in Mississippi, which is 40% African American, you redraw the map to have 0 Black voter opportunity districts, that is a complete remake of Congress. And that is not fairness. That is not accountability. That is a Republican power grab. And so we looked at the real life implications of gutting the Voting Rights Act, combined with this mid-decade power grab gerrymandering that Trump has mandated that Texas and other states do, could ultimately result, if the Roberts Court guts the VRA, in 27 new Republican seats, which would mean one-party rule of Congress. This is a radical, extreme, anti-fairness, anti-freedom initiative that is part of dismantling our civil rights in this country and would really gut the opportunity for people of color and other minorities to have a representative of their choice. So this is really, really concerning and could result in a scramble to redraw the maps in time for 2026. We know this is a far-right Republican priority because they've said it is. We have Steve Bannon and far-right folks in Trump world talking about how they don't have to win new hearts and minds, they just need to rig the maps, right? That was what they were talking about last year. So we're encouraging folks to get involved, to call their members of Congress, to advocate to reform the court and to pass a new Voting Rights Act so that we don't go backwards in time back to Jim Crow when American minorities and voters of color did not have representation in Congress. So this is very, very serious, and we're hoping folks will get involved and not let the court let the southern voters go quietly into the night here. So it's going to be a very big day at the Supreme Court. Today, the argument, and we'll be doing organizing with Black Voters Matter and other groups as we go forward in the coming weeks.
Lauren, I got a quick 30 seconds here left. I want to know that if you could speak directly to justices about this issue before they rule it, what would you say to them?
We need fairness in this country. Black voters are 85% of Black voters live in the South, and all voters should have the opportunity to have fair maps to elect representatives that will advocate for their issues. We do not want to go back in time to a Jim Crow era where Black voters do not have the opportunity to elect their candidates of choice, and all Americans do not get the benefit of a real diverse representative Congress.
Well, a new report from Goldman Sachs says American consumers are feeling the pinch more than ever before. Analysts now estimate U.S. households are shouldering more than half the cost of recent tariffs, a shift that's driving up prices and pushing inflation higher. Tariffs have already been added close to 0.5 percentage point to the nation's core inflation, and that is expected to climb nearly 3% by December. Let's go inside the numbers now with Professor Sina Galara from Georgia State's College of Business. He joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
All right. Talk to us about what's driving the shift on consumers instead of on these companies.
Well, tariffs are increasing the cost of imports, and so that leaves the American importers and businesses with the choice of whether they should pass on these costs to consumer or absorb them or find alternatives. The last two has been difficult, and finding alternatives for business practices that have been cemented for several decades now has been really challenging. It's going to take a lot of time. So the easiest solution for many businesses, at least for the short term, is to pass on these costs to consumers, which will show up in the form of consumer prices rising.
Yeah, there's a figure out there, 55%. How does that translate to the everyday shopper? Is it just a few cents more, or is it a real like sticker shock for major items?
I think it's going to be a tangible impact. Adding up all the tariff costs, some estimates show that this could amount to a few $1,000s per household. So it's very difficult to exactly pinpoint, but for the items that are being tariffed, the consumer will definitely feel a meaningful change in the price they pay.
Yeah. What kind of industries are really going to be most exposed here?
Pretty much all the industries impacted by targeted by tariffs. So we import a lot of things from a lot of places. Lots of Chinese products, for example, are going to be heavily impacted. They have some of the highest tariff levels. Furniture, plastic items, toys, some electronics, and housing related items, lumber, copper, iron. Pretty much they are vast and wide, and so the administration has been very liberal with where they apply these tariffs, so the effects will be widespread.
Yeah, like those companies you just named, how much flexibility will they really have, or can they just source around the tariffs, or is that just an easier said than done term?
Yeah, the theory is once you increase the cost of import, the American business would be forced to find a replacement domestically. But the big question is there a good choice there? And it's important to realize that there has been a very important, strong, and structural reason that these companies have been sourcing from outside the America, and that has been, a lot of the economics of trade, and the fact that it's very expensive to make many of these items domestically, and so for that reason, many businesses have relied on foreign goods, and they have built their whole supply chains around that. This is something that will take many years, maybe 5 years, 10 years, even if and it may not even work for all the industries, but for the ones that do, it will take time. So they can find good resources domestically. In the meantime, there will be a lot of pain. Either the business has to shoulder that, or the consumer. And if the business shoulders it, the consumers is still, at the end of the day, will be paying that.
Got 30 seconds left. Do you expect these burdens to grow, or eventually we'll see the 60% or 70%, or will they come down? What do you think?
I think for the next year or two, I don't anticipate much change in foreigners paying. So it will be just the American business and American consumer juggling the burden between each other. And a lot of the things that will happen is initially businesses are reluctant to pass on the cost, but they will slowly raise prices and make the consumer pay for it step by step more and more.
A recent fatal crash happened this past Friday on Georgia 400 in Forsyth County, multi-vehicle collision, which left several people trapped in the wreckage. Crews had to use the jaws of life, and at last report, at least one person was listed in critical condition. Both crashes were on different highways, same heartbreak, and both seem to have shared those rear end impacts that we hear about so much. Let's bring in 11Alive's Gridlock guy, Doug Turnbull, to help us dissect some of this of what's going on. Doug, talk to us about it. These you hear about it all the time. You're on the roadways, and what causes this, or what's the leading cause of this, I should ask you?
Well, for sure. And before we even get to driver behavior, the biggest, worst crashes in my years of reporting happen when fast meets slow. And I know that sounds obvious, but think about the times of day that could be. In these two cases, these were anomalies, but a lot of times you think about the early hours of rush hour around 6 a.m. when we're, heavy in our coverage, Rachel Cox, Rosen, and I on 11Alive, when the fast meets slow, right? They're starting to see volume build. The person that forgets to hit their brakes is the one that caused the crash, right? And same in the afternoon and kind of the 2:30 and 3:30 hour or half hours as well. So you think about that. And then also there's distraction, their speed, and then in the case of the 400 crash, an alleged DUI as well, where if you mix any of those things together, you mix DUI with driving at all, but certainly distraction and speed, you create a concoction where most times, let's face it, most times you get away with it. It's the time you don't, and it's absolutely tragic. On the 400 case, a helicopter ambulance came, shut 400 down both directions, a person in critical condition, multiple injuries. On the 85 case, 8 people were killed, not to mention the scare for those cats there too. And 2 of those cats, by the way, got away and are strays. They're still looking for. So you never know what one bad decision could cause, and certainly you're more likely to have that happen when, again, fast meets slow. Yeah, we talk about that. We talk about being distracted. I guess the sun obviously would play maybe a role in that, being blinded by that. I mean, how often does this happen? How often do you hear about it? Well, look, having these happen 2 times in 3 days, you start going, what pattern? What's going on in Georgia? I really just think it was 2 situations, and they were separate from each other, different interstates, different parts of town. But look, we're about to go through a time change, all right? And when it gets, when it gets light, I'm trying to think of a fall back, it gets lighter earlier, so you're going to have more sunshine and morning drive. All right, starting here later this month. Sunshine is a big thing. Like you mentioned, Chesley, you forecast it every day. This dry month, we saw it out on the roads. You can be blinded by something, and you mix in, say, distraction and extra speed. kaboom. You've got your visibility limited in a way that limits everybody, and then those other factors, you can have it.
So would you say it's the volume for us here in Atlanta? I mean, that plays a role in it as well, that leads to these pileups?
Yeah, look, it's a driver behavior mixed with heavy volume. And again, you go from a place of light volume up to heavy volume. Maybe you're going from the suburbs, they get closer to the city, you're humming along 80 miles an hour, and suddenly things blow up to 35. That's where we get our worst problems. And also the arterial roads, the roads that have that 35, 45 mile an hour speed limit, are actually the most fatal out of all the ones you could drive on.
She turned a moment of despair into a mission of hope. Atlanta's own Gloria Humana, founder of the Hope Booth, is being honored as one of L'Oreal Paris's 2025 Women of Worth for reimagining how we reach people in their darkest moments. You know, her immersive installations and her story are changing the way communities are talking about mental health. Gloria joins us now to share how her journey began and what's next. Gloria, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. What an honor to be here.
Absolutely. Talk to me about how surprised you were to receive this honor.
Oh my goodness. Well, firstly, to find out that I was one of 10 of 4,000 nominations was absolutely mind-blowing and unbelievable. I know sometimes, we think as leaders, a lot of times we know our work is impressive, but more than being impressive, we aim for it to be impactful. And so for it to be recognized by a global brand like L'Oreal Paris was just absolutely surreal for me.
Yeah. This is for your work with the Honor Booth. Talk to us about your journey to create this tool.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Hope Booth was created ultimately out of pain on October 29, 2011. That was the day that I nearly lost my life to suicide. If it weren't for the power of that four-letter word, hope, that I found on that day, I wouldn't be here today. And so really, over the last few years, we wanted to find a way to create something that would help people access hope and access mental health care, regardless if it was 2 a.m. or 2 p.m., regardless if they had the resources or the finances. We believe that hope should be accessible as telephone booths once were. Back in the day when we used to have them in the city, you were just a few coins away from being able to connect to someone. When we started to look around in our city, in our world, we started to see these mental health statistics that were astronomical. We see that 900,000 people are losing their life to suicide every single year. And so we thought to ourselves, what does it look like to use our creativity to impact people in the middle of the street, to impact people at schools, to impact people at an airport, wherever people are, to give them consistent 24/7 free access to mental health. And so that's when we created the Hope Booth. And what we do ultimately is extremely innovative at heart. We partner with a science board of neurologists, psychologists, therapists, and social workers to create something very unique. We remodel old telephone booths into these evidence-based, interactive, immersive experiences that are designed to spread hope and then connect people to local help and support within a 5-mile radius. So this could look like cost-reduced shelter, therapy, food banks, whatever someone could be in need of that could support their mental health journey. That's our goal. And so it's been absolutely incredible to be on this journey of something that started as a dream now is something we are walking in and seeing so many lives impacted in a short amount of time.
This is a great idea. I would imagine young people, beyond my generation wouldn't know what a phone booth is. So this is kind of reimagined, like you said, into something that can help people. What are some of the reactions that you're getting from people who step inside?
Yeah, absolutely. The reactions are a really wide spectrum because our users are a wide spectrum. We have people who are living on the streets who experience the Hope Booth to simply find the nearest shelter to them. And then we have people who stumble upon the Hope Booth actually out of curiosity. They see it at Pont City Market. They see it. It's vibrant. It's beautiful. It's very inviting and warming. So people come out of curiosity, but they stay out of desire and as need. And we've seen oftentimes, a lot of times the Hope Booth is actually an anchor in a community. And we have so many families who reach out to us and say, hey, my son has been struggling with schizophrenia. He's been struggling with mental health issues, and we can't afford traditional mental health care. And so our son walks to the local Hope Booth every single week, and that is what's keeping him alive. That is his source of hope. And so when we hear stories like that, we recognize that this work is so much bigger than creating something unique, but it's actually creating something with an accuracy that has the ability to impact people and keep people alive. You know, right now we see about a 78% increase in hope just after one experience that people are reporting. We have about 58% of people who are actually finding their therapists through the Hope Booth, who are finding communities and churches and opportunities to connect with people. And we've seen countless suicides averted. And so it's been absolutely incredible to see that the data, the numbers, all of this really points to individuals who hold stories that are meaningful. And we are so honored to get to fight on behalf of those lives.
Very, very nice. Now, you got this recognition. Are you hoping that it will expand the mission?
Oh, absolutely. I know for sure that being a 2025 L'Oreal Paris Women of Worth honoree is no small feat. You know, that is a global brand that prioritizes not just beauty on the outside, but also on the inside. For the last 2 decades, they have been consistently celebrating women who have exuded joy, who have exuded power, resilience, and those are all things that our organization cares deeply about. But really, what L'Oreal Paris is doing is creating a platform to remind us all that we're all worth it. And that at the end of the day, when we all play our part, when we put our heart into the work that we do, we put our hands to the plow, real impact can happen, real change can happen. And I'm excited to be an honoree that represents Atlanta, one of the best cities that there is in the United States, dare I say in the world, to get to be here to represent our city. And so this honoree, you know, it's beyond just me. This is for the city that raised me. This is for the people who are committed to hard work, who are committed to impact, who are committed to mental health specifically, and I'm just honored to get to be here.
My final take today, and it is a salute to an Atlanta icon and an American treasure. I'm talking about Ambassador Andrew Young. You know, most of us already know that he was on the front lines of the civil rights movement with Dr. King and later served as Atlanta's mayor. And this week, a new MSNBC documentary will be released called Andrew Young, The Dirty Work. You know, I've had the honor of sitting down with the ambassador. I sat down with him recently for an interview, and I've always been amazed by his humility. In fact, it's almost hard to get him to talk about himself and the incredible historic things that he's accomplished. He's always been about the work, and even at 93, you will still see him all across Atlanta, showing up even in his wheelchair to different events, fighting for the community, which I think is just so awesome. So often the work is on Dr. King. We talk about the work he did with Dr. King, but Andrew Young, as someone who's from Atlanta, I often think about how his work is truly etched into the fabric of this city, from bringing the Olympics to Atlanta in 1996, helping secure funding to start MARTA, and to expanding what's now the world's busiest airport. Andrew Young, if you think about it, has had a huge indelible mark and role in pretty much most big things that have happened in Atlanta over the last 50 years. So every time I see him, I thank him for what he's done for our city, and I think we all should. Thanks for joining us this morning on The Take. Chesley will be back tomorrow. Have a great day.